Peace, everyone. Welcome back. So we are back for part two to an early video that I made on this very interesting story relating to a bisexual white male who emailed me several days ago expressing his interest in being dominated by a black man. But in uncovering his interests and uncovering his past, a lot of things came to surface. And I don't think I was ready for this follow-up email that he sent me and talking about his story, particularly his childhood story, some things that his lived experience, right? He's from Florida. He is a 42-year-old white man. I will say he's bisexual, given the details of what he shared with me, right? But he definitely is in a place where he isn't quite sure, all right, where he fit in, how he wants to identify himself. It's like he's in a state of flux, right? He was very candid about talking about some of his past sexual experiences and being attracted to femboys, being attracted to trans women, being attracted to dominant black men. He fantasizes. Actually, he has two kind of dichotomous fantasies, right? So on one hand, he fantasizes about being in a traditional relationship, right? Man and woman, and having, kids, like the traditional American dream, right? He fantasizes about that, or he romanticizes, rather, the idea of that type of scenario, right? That type of arrangement. But on the other hand, he also fantasizes and holds and embodies this fetish of being dominated by a black dominant man, being subservient, being submissive. I find that very interesting. Welcome to those who are watching this video live on Facebook. Welcome. Okay, interesting. So we have some feedback here. And I think it's kind of rare that people actually catch me while I'm live. I usually record my videos live on Facebook, then I download them, then I upload them to YouTube. So for me, this process of going live on Facebook, typically is for the sake of recording the video. But it's interesting to get live feedback. So let's see. You say, I hate it when they are like that. I hate when men are like this. They are homosexuals, and there's nothing wrong with that. I deal with this all the time. So now, Hazel, if you feel comfortable, feel free to share how you identify yourself in terms of your sexual identity and what you're interested in. Right? Because I think it's safe to not assume, right, a person's sexual identity or their gender identity and how they would like to identify themselves as. So feel free to share if you are comfortable. For me, I respect whatever position a person is in because I understand it, right? I understand when people have to hide behind this facade, right? And they kind of are in flux. They are in a position of not really proclaiming and outwardly expressing a particular identity publicly because of the stigma attached to that, right? Or, the shame. They haven't come to terms with really who they are, right? And fully accept it and embrace that and everything that comes along with that. Some people, there's levels to it, right? There's levels to, I think, sexual identity, gender identity and expression, and just identity in general, right? Funny enough, like my dissertation was on Black identity, but there is some overlap, right, in trying to conceptualize like these different aspects of our identity, who we are, and how we are in a constant state of identity development, like, you know, based on the things that are happening outside of us in our society, right? We're constantly, you know, being shaped and being molded, and the thing is, it's just like, it's an ongoing process. It's not something that I think is just, you know, that cut and dry, that black and white. It's not easy, I think, for a lot of people. So much of what I'm going to talk about here in this video, and as I've expressed in previous videos as it relates to gender expression, gender fluidity, sexual fluidity, I think it can apply obviously to other aspects of our identity, like as it relates to race and ethnicity. So I definitely understand. I know where you're coming from though, because I think for you, let's see what you say. I am a trans woman. I am attracted to masculinity. I definitely got that. I just wanted you to say it. I identify as a female trans woman. So yeah, I definitely got that. I can definitely see where you're coming from, especially myself as a woman, similar to yourself, right? It's like you want and you appreciate men who are honest, who are comfortable in who they are, who are unashamed, who are unafraid, who just boldly step out and they are who they are. But I think it's just difficult. Like, you are in a different place, right? And I'm sure you probably haven't always necessarily been there. So I think it's helpful for a person like yourself who is in a different latter stage in your development to be able to share what your journey was like, right? Share those experiences. Share even like your challenges that you face and you still continue to face, because I'm sure it's not easy. So we're going to read this follow-up email that he sent me. And I think it's interesting because it's a lot of things that he did express in this follow-up email, but it's a lot of things that he left kind of untouched. But it's evident, right? It's just evident reading between the lines, and I'm going to address that. So a little bit more backstory. So this guy, he identifies himself as a white man, 42 years old. He lives in Florida. I did ask him, like, you know, where are you writing this? Where are you from? And he told me that he's, you know, from Florida, I think north of Fort Lauderdale, in that area. He is college educated. He had to specify that and throw that in there, that he's college educated. You know, he has opportunities that are accessible to him, right? So it's not like he's a bum necessarily. And I think it's interesting, though, the things that people choose to deliberately share, I think it says a lot. Like, there's something there to be interpreted. But the fact that he had to kind of enunciate that and make that very clear that he, you know, is, in a sense, financially stable. I wouldn't say, like, well off, but he, you know, he's set in that department. He did share that he experienced 2 failed marriages, right? And he did articulate that he has had some experience with white women, though he prefers black women. He prefers to be black women and Latino women and black men, right? So the way he, like, the place that he's in right now, he interprets, right? The way he, like, the space he's in, he feels like his story is complicated. And I can see why, because, like, it is a lot going on. And that's, I think, where I come in, because I like to kind of create a space, a holding space, right? To be able to contain people's stories. to be able to conceptualize, to be able to create a framework, to establish a framework for understanding a person's story, to make it make sense, right? So I enjoy personally like coming to you guys and making these videos related to various stories that people present to me. This is fun. Like, I do this for fun. Granted, I have been thinking about ways that I could make it definitely more beneficial for you guys, for myself, in terms of monetization of this, but we'll talk more about that later. So the biggest issue is women don't give men the space to express themselves or their sexuality. Women can be with other women and it's viewed as okay, but for a man to be interested in another man, or let's see, I am going to get into his email, or Transwomen is viewed as disgusting. Some men feel the need to hide who they really are or what they really are. I love your videos. It is fun. Thank you. And I appreciate you for tuning in. I appreciate your feedback. I appreciate your honesty and sharing, you know, your identity, how you identify yourself and who you are, how you express yourself. I think it's very commendable, like, for you to be in that space where you feel comfortable. You are out, essentially, right? Like, you're not hiding who you are. And that brings up a good point, because I think for this guy, this man, I wouldn't say he's out. And I was inclined to even ask the question, like, relating to his past, as he describes them, failed marriages. I'm curious, like, were they aware of these dark secrets that he has, right? His proclivities, his interests, his kinks, his fetishes, and wanting to be dominated by a black man, right? And having an interest in trans women and femboys. Like, were his ex-wives aware of this? And I would like to say no. I'm pretty confident in that. Of course, he will follow up. He will let us know. But I don't think they were aware. And so I've said this before, right? When it comes to our fetishes, our kinks, our interests, like, we are who we are. We're interested in what we're interested in. All right? I don't stigmatize a person for who they are and what they're interested in. However, I do challenge people to dig deep, right? And to explore, like, what is it that is driving that interest that you have? There's something behind it, right? What is it? To uncover the foundation. Because we all come from something, right? In terms of our developmental experiences, our childhood. That is the part I'm interested in, right? And so I challenge people who reach out to me and who share their stories, right? And their interests, like, to dig a little bit deeper, and they do. And right, and here he is. He did. And so in his follow-up email, which I'm going to read here in this video, he uncovers some things about his past. And it makes sense. And I say this because, you know, we obviously, you know, are driven to be attracted to different things for different reasons, right? But I find that oftentimes people, they use sex. It's like it's a tool. It's this thing that people kind of gravitate to and with this assumption that it's going to fix, like, all of their problems, right? And it makes them feel good in the moment. And of course, I talked about this in one of my previous videos, you know, how sex for a lot of people is like this temporary panacea for all of the emotional pain that they're carrying with them. And it's not going to fix a problem. It can make you feel, you know, a little bit better in that moment, the short span of time that sexual encounter lasts, but ultimately, right, is not going to fix the problem, whatever problems that you come with, which for a lot of people who find themselves in this sphere, right, in this sphere and spectrum of sexual exploration and sexual fluidity and BDSM and LGBTQIA, like they find themselves kind of, we're here, right? And I wouldn't say that it's necessarily a safe space, right? I think people find like, okay, these are other people they identify with, but is it truly a safe space? And it makes me think about this platform called FetLife. It's a social networking site for people who identify with under the BDSM umbrella, right? And it includes all the things, LGBTQIA and all of that, and all these different fetishes. And yes, on the surface, it may appear as a community that, okay, you could relate to, you can find like, your tribe, your community. But for me, right? Because I see things through a different lens. And as a spiritual person, I'm spiritual above anything else, right? Above being, identify myself as a submissive woman or being affiliated with the BDSM community. Like, I am a spiritual person. So I look at things through a spiritual lens. And it's just like, what I see is a lot of people have taken to, that space, that community, that platform, just to kind of exercise, obviously their sexual freedoms. But through that, it's like their demons are coming out. That's a whole, I see it. The demons are coming out, and they are able to kind of relate, identify, and exchange energy with other people who also come from dark spaces and have unresolved issues, right? And are dealing with some heavy stuff. And so it makes sense because, like I say, it's a no judgment zone, but this is a zone for people to be honest, to be candid, to be frank, to be transparent, to be uninhibited about what's going on. Like, can we just be real is all I'm saying. Can we just be real? All right, so let's go ahead and get into this. Let's go ahead and get into it. I love BDSM. I feel weird sometimes, but not everyone is into it. All right, so let's just go ahead and get into this follow-up email that he sent. Like I said, I wasn't quite ready for this, what he shared. So he says, hello, I just listened to the video and I really enjoyed it. You made some good points, a few that I haven't considered. There is actually a lot that I would like to discuss. And of course there is. Of course, there's a lot. And granted, this email that he sent, good little essay. But it's not all inclusive, right? There's a lot of things that he left out. But let's just jump into it. He says, as far as my business and family, I've had some ups and downs twice now. Funny enough, the number 2 is a theme, right? He was married twice, 2 failed marriages. Now he says twice now. I have almost attained true financial freedom, only to implode and screw the whole thing up. So we're going to definitely pull back the layers, but kind of going back to what I was just kind of saying is that, yes, sex is a tool, as I've said, right? And I don't know if you guys who are watching this are familiar with the website, the social networking site, FetLife, but it's just it's really a sex-based site. For me, I don't lead with sex, right? I think sex is it's a part of it, but it's not something that motivates me necessarily. And for a lot of people, that's kind of the driving factor. And so people definitely form connections just based on sexual interest, sexual proclivities. And like I said, it serves a purpose, I think, in that short moment. in that very brief moment, but then ultimately there's still a void and there's still a lot of other stuff going on. And then the thing is just like, imagine, sex aside, right? You are in this space where people have all of this baggage, all of the things that they come with that are unresolved, right? But I think in their mind's eye, they find a way to deal with it temporarily, right, through these fetishes, these kinks. And they're coming with this stuff, assuming like this is just the end all be all. It's like Disneyland. It's like, okay, this is an escape, right? It's a place where people can come with mutual interest and oftentimes mutual degrees of baggage, emotional baggage and trauma, right? It's like game, kind of recognized game. And like energy attracts like energy. And so, they're attracted to people who kind of meet their frequency, meet them where they're at in terms of their level of unhealed emotional trauma, psychological trauma. This is why, yes, they can identify with each other so easily. It's like a seamless type of attraction that is developed. But then all hell breaks loose and shit hits the fan, right? And I know, like, he can like, people with experience and people who are honest enough to take a look at themselves and are able to accept and can be able to look at themselves, right? Because that's the thing about my videos. I am a mirror because I'm very transparent. I'm uninhibited. Like, I am a mirror, so I'm going to reflect back to you who you are. And so if you can handle being able to look at yourself, then that's where true progress and growth can take form. He says, twice now I have almost attained true financial freedom, only to implode and screw the whole thing up. I have a new plan now. After my last marriage, I started a specialty plumbing contractor business. So clearly he's a blue collar worker, right? We mostly focus on irrigation and pool construction. I have one state license and I'm working on a second license. Listen, nothing against blue collar workers, right? But just to kind of set the stage, kind of set, the background. We're going to definitely go into his background because he kind of lays it out. I've had several employees. Currently, I don't have any. So it just makes you wonder. It's like, how do you go from having or coming close to attaining financial freedom, where you have things kind of laid out for you, and you had employees, to now not having any? And it's good. I have to preface this by saying that in his initial email that he sent where he was introducing himself, he did say that currently he's not chasing no booty, right? He's not really interested at this point in his life right now in necessarily engaging in sexual encounters. He's focused on building this financial foundation for himself, right? Making sure that he is financially stable, which makes sense. Right, making sure that his ducks are in a row before he invites someone else, right, and a person outside of him into his space that is not really quite organized, that is not really quite set. It makes better sense, right, to make sure that not only obviously you are financially set and stable, but psychologically too. Like, you gotta make sure, like, things are clear, which I feel like this is the work that we don't do. It's easy to get ourselves dressed out, right, on externally and, attain businesses, build businesses, and buy homes, right? All these kind of materialistic things, but oftentimes we neglect our most important thing, which is our psychological, emotional well-being. And so what happens is that the pattern repeats itself, right? Like, your problems don't go away. Like, the baggage that you've carried with you since you were a little child. These maladaptive patterns that have formed and that you continue to perpetuate will definitely continue until you take some time to look at yourself in the mirror, right? And when I say that, is essentially to get therapy. Me doing these videos is not therapy. I have to be clear, right? Yes, I am a licensed psychologist, but this is not therapy. It's an analysis of a person's history, right, and the things that they have going on, but it's definitely not therapy by any way, shape, or form. So I am an advocate, though, clearly, for people going to meet with someone and to be able to have that mirror held up, right, and so that they can actually work through that one-on-one in a private, safe space. Yes, because I'm not financially stable. Nothing feels right. Exactly. I mean, it goes back to the hierarchy of needs, according to Maslow, right? You have to have those basic physiological needs met first, right? Being able to have adequate food and shelter, like that creates a sense of physical security for a person before you can move up that ladder to having those other needs met and being able to attain, those other emotional and relational needs. You can't just jump up to being able to establish a healthy relationship with a partner if you're worried about how you're going to pay your bills, how are you going to make ends meet. So let's continue. I have one state license and I'm working on a second license. I've had several employees. Currently, I don't have any. Soon, I will need to hire someone full-time. My small business allows me to pay the bills with a level of freedom. I don't have a boss, and I can't have a boss. Honestly, it drives me crazy. I'm sure you can't, but listen, there is a contradiction, though. And I have to point it out to you, right? To show that, yes, on one hand, you say that you desire, and ultimately it's like this idolized fantasy that you created in your own mind's eye for what you think would be appropriate for you to bring you self-satisfaction. You said this in a previous email that you would love to have a dominant black man and you become his submissive and be 100% his housewife. But then on the other hand, you go and say you cannot have a boss. It drives you crazy. So do you see that? Do you see how you just kind of created this contradiction? The contradiction lies within yourself. It's like a split, right? It's like an all or nothing type of split that lives within inside of you. And it makes sense why you said in your previous email, like, okay, your life is a bit complicated. I think that what complicates it is the fact that, you have a lot of internal struggles that are not resolved. So it makes sense why you say, you know what, I am not in a space to be dating nobody, to be sexually active necessarily. It's about really focusing on me, right? And making sure that I am level-headed first before I take it that step further to invite someone else in. Do not invite nobody because it's going to create more chaos. And then the patterns are just going to repeat themselves. You're talking about your last marriage was disastrous. It's just, you're going to create a whole nother disastrous relationship, essentially. All right? It's not going to improve until you improve. You've been able to find a level of stability. You say here a degree of freedom. I wouldn't say financial freedom, but maybe freedom from people imposing upon you rules, structure, demands, right, that you are honest enough to admit that you can't live up to. Makes sense, right? Because there are so many unresolved issues, so you are easily triggered. I get it, right? You having to work for someone else, that is too much. That would be too much for you. Too demanding, too triggering. And maybe I can go ahead and insert it here. But I also noticed, I'm kind of jumping the gun a little bit. But I'll go ahead and insert it here, that to say, I did notice, and I'm going to continue reading this email that you sent, but relating to your upbringing, your family dynamic, nowhere have you mentioned anything about your father. That is a significant piece. So we're going to put a pin in that and we'll come back to it. And I can't have a boss. Honestly, it drives me crazy. Go figure. There's going to be a lot of transference, a lot of counter transference happening, especially if this boss is a man, especially if the boss is a white man, with you apparently having an absentee father. Of course, it's going to be problematic because there are some unresolved issues there. All that said, my work does not provide me with a lot of disposable income, not yet. So you go to say that you have a level of freedom. Yes, I guess being able to kind of have a sense of autonomy and make your own decisions. But within that, is it financial freedom? Not quite, because you don't really have much disposable income. I mean, you have enough income, like you said, to pay the bills, right? Like it pays the bills. It allows you to pay the bills, but that's the extent. So moving along, you say, I also have a lot of responsibilities. I take care of 3 family members. Yeah, that's a lot. An older son with a disability, a younger son, and an elderly mother. I would like to have more children when my finances are right. Listen, to be honest with you, listen. Not to shit on anybody's parade, but it's just like, it sounds like you already have a lot going on and you're 42 years old. You have 2 children. Funny enough, you did not mention that in your previous email where you talk about 2 failed marriages. And I'm wondering if these 2 children are from each marriage, right? 1 child from each failed marriage. You didn't mention these 2 children. And you're taking care of them. That means you have custody of these children, which makes me wonder, right? There's more questions to be asked. It's just like, why aren't the children in the custody and the care of their mother? Why you as opposed to the mother? So many concerns here are being raised, which also raised another concern for me, and I can go ahead and ask it here, address it here, but we will revisit it a little bit later as we go a little bit deeper into, your childhood and what that looked like. But it just makes me wonder, with all of this shit going on, which you didn't mention, but I have to ask about substances. That can be a touchy subject, I know. Well, with all of this, like I said, I wasn't quite ready for this email that you sent, but with all of this going on, it just makes me wonder, like, all of this, it can make anybody want to use some substances to cope. I'm sure you'll follow up, right, in an email. If you feel comfortable enough sharing, you can. But that's a lot. So an older son with a disability, a younger son, and an elderly mother. I would like to have more children when my finances are right. So I do think there's something about stepping out of my race. Of course there is, because you said that you prefer to date Black and Latino women in your previous email. You said, maybe it's a rebellion. In the past 15 years, I haven't dated very many white women. I'm just really turned off by their personalities. I have been in long-term relationships with Spanish and Black women. Well, you said it here. My ex-girlfriend was American Black and beautiful, 5'7", very athletic, so she was taller than you, probably more dominant than you too as well. I think I screwed that one up on purpose. I was not yet capable of providing the type of financial security she needed, and she also wanted all my attention, and I wouldn't be able to build business while in a relationship like that. I feel like that piece of content that you just shared right there is so valuable, right? And that granted, you feel comfortable sharing aspects of yourself and your history with me. I don't know who you are, right? Even though, of course, you share your name, you share, your location, where you're from, you're still anonymous to me. I don't know you. And even if I did, of course, I would not divulge who you are with my platform because, that would be a violation of your privacy. And it's not really important necessarily for the sake of this video. But it's like, I think it behooves you. Like, the things that you're sharing, it holds so much weight. It's so lucrative. Like, the depth of your transparency and the content of what you're sharing. I don't know if you are aware, like, if you have the insight to be able to put things into perspective and make sense of these things. And that's obviously where I come in to kind of create this framework to show you that, it's good that you're pointing out not only your strengths, right, but your weaknesses and some areas for improvement, but it makes it clear why you are single, right? It makes it clear why, you're in that space, and we all get there. I feel like, hell, I'm there now. I'm probably more so at the tail end of that period of kind of being single and just spending time alone and self-reflecting and building up yourself, right, and improving yourself. But it's just like you recognize, and it's clear, it's evident that this is a time and space for you to work on yourself, to see, like, okay, there are some problems. There are some issues that are apparent that if you don't focus on them and address them, it's just going to resurface in new relationships. Right? Even talking about, like, where you went wrong in a relationship that could have been pretty viable, that could have been pretty successful with, this Black woman that you mentioned, right? Who was 5'7", very athletic. You said that she wanted all your attention. Was it that she wanted all your attention, or she wanted you to be emotionally available? There is a difference. And I think the way you framed it, right, and saying that she wanted all your attention, that's to stroke your ego. But if you were to take it a step further and to do a little bit more deeper self-reflection and to be honest enough with yourself to kind of not fluff up your own ego, clearly there is a need for that, right? For you to stroke your ego because of your own insecurities, because of your own inadequacies. However, if you could take a step outside of your ego to be honest enough to admit that, okay, well, perhaps it's not that she wanted all of my attention, but perhaps is that I was not emotionally available, right? As opposed to projecting blame onto her to say, oh, she was needy. But no, she was just displaying a healthy desire. When it comes to being in a relationship with a person that you care about, it's a healthy level of desire to want your partner to be emotionally available, not just to be physically present, but emotionally there. And you could not give that to her. It's not about, oh, you were so busy and you're so busy trying to build up your business and blah, blah, blah. It's like, listen, and I find that very interesting because that comes up a lot. I've come across guys like that where on this video, I gotta go and do some shopping, do some water. But I've come across guys like that where they were trying to like pass the buck to say, oh, you know, I'm busy. Listen, nobody, I don't care. Listen, I know a wealth of different types of people from many different tax brackets. And it's not about being busy. It's about what you can deliver. It ain't about, you know, oh, I'm so busy. I run, you know, my own business. And that's just, all of that is ego stroking. Let's be clear. I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're president of fucking United States. I don't care if you own a Fortune 500 company. I don't care what position you are, who you are. It's not about being that busy, right? It's about what you're capable and willing to provide. And because we all know this, people make time for the things that they want and they're able to make time for. When I say able, it comes from a space of, are you emotionally capable of being present? That is what I mean by being able. Not, oh, do you have the time to commit emotionally to her? You don't even have the emotional capability, right? You didn't really deserve her. Like, and you, at least you were able to admit that you did not deserve her, right? You even said, I was not yet capable of providing the type of financial security, let alone emotional fucking security, right, that she needed. You say, I wouldn't be able to build my business, blah, blah, blah. That's bullshit, though. How do I know it's bullshit? Because I've seen it in live and full form done by people who I'm sure make way more money than you've ever seen. And also, they're married, they have kids, right? It's just about what you want and you being able to manage your time effectively. It's nothing to do with, oh, I don't have enough time, right? And let's unpack that. Let's go with that, right? Oh, I don't have the time because I'm building my business. That speaks to your inability to be able to multitask, right? And to manage your time effectively. Because I was in a whole PhD program. Anybody knows anything about doctoral programs, whether it's a PhD or MD, the level of time and energy and effort that is required to successfully complete these types of fucking programs. I was able to do that, and also at the same time still be emotionally available to my partner. You see what I'm saying? So it's really just, it boils down to where you were emotionally. Where were you at that time psychologically? All right? And even looking at yourself now as you continue to build your businesses or your business, you know, yes, owning a business, because I'm a business owner myself, like I know like the investment, the time, the financial, the emotional investment it takes to build, right? And that can be a test also of your own emotional and psychological well-being, you know? So when we talk about failed marriages or struggling businesses, right? Sometimes it's just a reflection of our own emotional and psychological and physical viability. Because there are people who are doing the damn thing, doing all the things simultaneously, right? So let's continue. The only white women that I'm attracted to are much older, motherly, dominant. I think this is because I never really had a mother. That's powerful right there. You know, that statement alone packs so much detail. Like it's so much weight just in that statement alone. Alone, yo. The only white women that I'm attracted to are much older, motherly, dominant. I think this is because I never really had a mother. That probably would explain why your past marriages didn't work. Think about it. If you're showing up to a relationship that then evolves somehow to a marriage, and you're not yet a fully matured adult, and the person that you're with, they come to that relationship and they have this understanding and perspective that you are this mature adult. They didn't know that they will come to realize that you're not that person that you have portrayed as this facade that you portrayed. You know the amount of letdown that person is experiencing, right? Just imagine putting yourself in that person's shoes, right? The level of disappointment and all the other things that they end up having to face in terms of facing their own reality. The things that kind of envelop from those failed marriages. Not to say all of the blame is attributed to you, because of course it takes two, right? They came with their shit too. But you, being the mature man that you are, taking ownership for your shit and looking back, can admit, like, damn, this is where I failed, right? So when we talk about failed relationships or shitty relationships, we could reframe that to say, listen, this is where I went wrong. This is what I brought to the table. This is how I showed up, right? This is the things that I could have done differently, right? It just shows a level of maturity, responsibility, ownership. And from that, you can grow. So that these patterns, because all it is patterns, right? Behavior is patterns. It repeats. If nothing changes, right? If everything is always the other person's fault in anything, nothing changes, all right? You may try to go change against somebody else, which oftentimes that's how it manifests, right? Because we aren't mature enough. We don't have the ego capacity, the strength to take an honest look at ourselves. So then we say, oh, every problem that I experience, I encounter is because of that other person. It's because of the white women I dated. These white women, they ain't it. I gotta go to the black women because they ain't it. Right? And that's why I was talking about self-hatred. It sounds like I was tapping into, right, what could be the source and how for us to conceptualize like some of these issues that you face, right? And relating it back to a degree of self-hatred or hatred for one's race. Hatred linked to one's race, right? These white women. So you go to the black women, you go to the Latino women, right? That shit ain't work. Okay, well, let me try men. Let's see how things gonna go, right? You keep trying different things, so you change your attraction. You change the people that you are with. And that can go on through eternity, right? But you never really quite change self, right? You never really quite slow down and take a look at self. And I think it's easier, clearly. You know, that's why people run through so many different fucking people, so many different partners, because it's much easier, right? It's easier to discard someone. All right, fuck you. This shit ain't work out. Divorce. All right, next. It's easier to do that than it is to slow down, to really take some time to look at thyself, to invest in therapy, to do, that inner work, to go through that transformation, When you have a good therapist, you're going to feel that. You're going to feel yourself changing. You're going to feel that metaphysical change happening. Right? You're going to show up to some sessions sweating that shit out. I'm pretty sure even if you can be able to grasp the things that I'm saying, you might feel some changes happening now. Within your body right now, you may feel some things happening in your body right now as you're watching this. All right, so I never really had a mother. My mom gave, excuse me, that's how this called. My mom gave me away at a young age to my grandmother. And I was like, this is what I mean when I say, I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready for this email. But listen, your level of transparency, I really appreciate. I respect. Kudos to you for having the courage, for taking the risk, for just jumping out there and saying, hey, this is what it is, you know? But that's some pretty heavy stuff, right? And I know because I think we live in a society where some things is just common, right? We look around and it's just becomes a status quo. Everybody around us, same shit, going through the same shit. So it's just like you become kind of immune to it. But no, I'll be the first to let you know that is a very sad place. And I'm sure you had many sad days and not having your mother present. Everybody deserves to have a mother. We came from a mother, we came from a father, right? All of us were created by the union of our mother and our father. And unfortunately, through life circumstances, some of us have grown up without having that maternal figure and sometimes paternal figure involved. And so there is a void. And I've said this numerous times before. That is a void that never can be fulfilled. And the way I put it is that the love that you were supposed to have gotten from your mother, you will never, nobody can give you that love that you were supposed to get. Why? Because you've already passed that developmental stage. You're 42 years old. You will never be 3 years old again. You will never be 10 months old again, 6 months old. You will never be 3 years old. You'll never be 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years old. Think about all of those different stages of development. I think this is a thing that we kind of just push under the rug. We don't really take the time to really dig deep into. And to really see like all the things that you missed out on that for some children they get. And I've been exposed to it. I mean, I find it interesting, because of course I have my own life experiences, right, that I've lived and that I'm still living. And as a Black woman living in a neighborhood where the median income is no less than 6 figures where I live, the median income. But there are people making well over that in my neighborhood in Upper East Side, Manhattan. It's a posh neighborhood, right? And so living in this neighborhood and then having Harlem, which is more of an impoverished kind of neighborhood, the median income is much less there than where I live. But I love to go to Harlem because obviously, I'm a Black woman, or I like to stay connected to my roots. And so just living here, but I visit there. And in fact, I'll be going there after this video, like to see the differences, to see the things that children in this neighborhood who have parents growing up in a 2-parent household, not to say everything is fucking peaches and cream and perfect. Everybody got their issues, right? But there are some stark differences. And just to see the luxury, the privilege, the affordabilities that these children have, it's just like amazing. And you can see, like, you put a child in this environment and they're growing up with all these different affordabilities, and then there's juxtaposed against that, children that don't have that. It makes sense. Why these children may grow up with better verbal abilities and improve emotional and psychological well-being, right? And be able to aspire to achieve such great things, and then meanwhile, their counterparts in another zip code, another neighborhood, just don't have that. There are some discrepancies there. It's different conversations, right? When we're talking about at different points in the child's development, certain things should happen. And I see this for myself. It's just like certain parent-child interactions are happening that should be happening, right? That I witnessed here in this neighborhood. And then you go down the street, it's just not happening, or it happens in a different way, right? There's a void. That's something that obviously could be expounded upon more in detail in the context of therapy. Right? For me and for you guys, in the sake of these videos, it's just kind of grazing the surface. That's what I do, right? Just, a little discussion, kind of grazing the surface. But if you want to go real deep and be very detailed and pinpoint these developmental differences that you missed out on, how this manifests in your life as an adult, then that's something that you would pursue and take advantage of in therapy. And it makes sense. It's not to say, okay, everything is just going to be fucking problem solving therapy, right? Hell no. We're talking about how many years, how many experiences, and to have to undo all of that learning, undo all of those false teachings, undo everything that your mom could not provide. You talk about your mom not one time. And I'm sure I read this pretty thoroughly. This email, the other email that you sent, not one time did you mention your dad. But it makes sense though. Because like there's something to be said and what's not said, right? So you said, my mom gave me away at a young age to my grandmother. My grandmother did a good job, but I always wanted my mom. Of course you wanted your mom. Of course. It's only natural. I never got her when I needed her. That's very painful, yo. You went deep. I applaud you. I applaud you on that. You went deep, for real. That brings us to this next point. Why I'm attracted to strong black men. So I would like to take it even a step further. The fact that there was a maternal void, and the fact that you didn't mention anything about a paternal figure, I would also like to add, because sometimes people do this, like they will focus on one parent, right, and what one parent didn't provide, right, while neglecting the responsibility of the other parent and their lack of a contribution to how you have manifested as an adult, right? Like, I find that interesting. And I point it out sometimes when it happens too. Even, amongst my family, I've seen that where I have a cousin and his father was absent, but he always points to his father, his absentee father. Granted, his mother was there, but he attributed everything, right? And now he has some minor, I would say not major, it could be, right? If he wasn't getting treatment, but he does have some inherited, disabilities from, which he attributes to his father because his father wasn't there. I'm like, funny enough, I'm thinking how can you say, okay, how you know it's not linked to your mom, right? Granted, his mom was the one that was there, right? Who, had to be there to take care of him, right? But I just find it interesting. Like, he blamed everything, every little thing on his dad. Oh, the fact that I got, I think he has like astigmatism or something with his eye, right? Oh, I inherited from a dad, He's like, oh, his ass wasn't shit. It's all these negative things that he's attributing to his father because his father wasn't there physically. But I just find that interesting. And so people oftentimes do this, right? They call it splitting in the context of psychoanalysis, but people do like split and they, have the good parent and then the bad parent, right? And it seems like for you, because you have not mentioned anything about your dad, it's like, okay, yes, your mom was there, though you didn't explicitly state she was a bad mother, but you're saying in so many words, like you said, I wish that she showed up differently. I wish she was there for me, and she wasn't. And then you say, perhaps that's the reason why I'm attracted to strong black men. I think for you, yes, you need structure. That clearly wasn't there. And yeah, grandmothers be showing up, but they can only go but so far, right? A grandmother you can't replace, the mother, the father, the biological mother and father with a grandmother. It's just not the same. Grandmothers do a good job, but it's not the same. In terms of having a physically and emotionally present biological mother and father. And especially, kids know, right? You're growing up in grade school and you see other kids who have that, but yours isn't there. And I hear stories, and this is where, like, it really hits, where I've heard stories of adult men, talking about, going to school and picture day, right? Or, days where the parents come in and you see other kids, their parents are showing up for them, but where's yours? That does something. That does something to a child. And they live with that, right? You don't stop living. You continue to, carry on with your life, but it's still things that are unresolved that are there, and it shapes your reality. It shapes your perspective. It shapes how you relate to other people. It shapes how you interpret situations. Okay? These are things that could be explored further in therapy. Right? Because they possess something I don't, physical superiority and a big personality. So I mentioned in the previous video that I made in response to his initial email that he sent, and how his attraction to black men could just be him seeking out someone that complements him, right? Given that he is a white man, though he is short in stature. He says he's 5'3". And he talks about his small penis in the initial email, of being only 4.5 inches, juxtaposed against a black man who, his ideal is, more bigger in stature, physically superior to him, right? As a complement to the things that he lacks. Sometimes we are attracted to someone that complements us, right? That has something that we don't have, so that it kind of fits together like a glove. He talked about in the initial email that though he lacked these physical attributes that are deemed to be attractive, right, by societal standards, he has this big personality, so to speak. And so attractive personality where, like, women, girls, like, growing up in grade school and high school, like, he was able to still attract girls. But then the truth got out that, he's not endowed, right? He has a small penis, so to speak. So that definitely was a hit to his ego, to his self-esteem. It's the same with my mommy issues. It's a whole other thing dealing with a man with mommy issues, yo. And I can tell you right now, me being a submissive woman, me being attracted to alpha men, that shit don't fly. And so granted, he talks about the physical things that he lacks, right? Here he goes into a little bit deeper about the psychological insecurities, right? The psychological voids, the psychological mishaps or shortcomings or weaknesses that he has, right? It's easier to kind of talk about the physical. Oh, I have a small penis, right? He owns that. But then to talk about other things, and then this is where the challenge comes in, where I kind of push people who reach out to me and talk about, so they express themselves in terms of their fetishes so blatantly, but it's just like, okay, what's driving that fetish? What's beneath that? And so here it is, it comes out. The mommy issues. That's it. If you ever wanted to know, what is it? That's it. It's the mommy issues. And I'm glad that you could say that. You said this out of your own mouth, right? These are your words. I didn't say this, and then you just took it as your own belief. You said this. You have mommy issues, and that is the reason why you're drawn to this dominant energy. You are seeking this dominant energy to instill in you the structure that you did not get growing up. As a little boy who always wanted his mommy. And not only your mom, you don't talk about your dad. It's okay. You know, maybe you'll follow up about your dad. Oftentimes people in situations like this, they don't know nothing. They don't know much about the dad, right? barely know anything about your mom, let alone, you know, your dad responsible for your existence. Just don't know. So you can't really speak on someone you don't know. How can you say much about something or someone you have really no knowledge of, right? But that makes a lot of sense, though. And here's a challenge to even take it a step further, to do some reflection. Granted, those 2 failed marriages, no shits are done, right? But it's helpful going forward, right? As you are continuing to grow and mature before stepping into any new relationship, whether it's going to be with a man or a woman, is to see the role that those mommy issues play, right, in your identity as a 5'3" white male. How did that show up in those past relationships? Those past 2 failed marriages? The mommy issues. I become sexually drawn towards things that I genuinely desire. I want to pursue things that don't process. Is that the correct word to use? Or maybe attain them the only way I can. I think it's something there, but I'm not quite sure what you're trying to say. I want to pursue things that don't, you say process, but I don't know, they laugh out loud. Or maybe attain them the only way I can. Maybe that's your challenge. Sometimes, you know, when it comes to us dealing with our shit, right? Dealing with our baggage, our traumas, our unmet needs, we find any kind of way to deal with it. Like I said, some people may turn to drugs, some people turn to sex, which I've explained in my previous video how it can be a drug. You turn to different relationship dynamics that fulfill a certain type of need that you have, right? We know how to get our needs met. That's the thing about human beings. We're going to find a way, and we naturally gravitate to that, right? Which is why, like you say, you're attracted to dominant men and you want to be dominated. And, you know, sex is a powerful thing. Sometimes people kind of reduce it to, oh, it's just sex. It's just something physical. But nah, it's spiritual. And it's the reason why you are drawn to that, because through that exchange with dominant black men, you are getting that psychological need met in that moment, right? You kind of imagine, what it's like. I mean, obviously you're a father now, right? And it's interesting to see how even, your childhood trauma manifests itself as a parent, right? It manifests itself different ways in terms of different types of relationships that you have, right? Your role as a partner in a relationship, right? As a husband, your role as a parent, right? The things that we carry with us from childhood, we carry with us in our relationships, professionally, personally. Can a white man like me and a physically powerful black man complement one another? And he says, I volunteer at a state prison. I regularly see this black guy. He is 6 feet something and very muscular. Now, of course, I had to raise an eyebrow on this one. I'm like, you volunteer at a state prison, but you're saying that you regularly see this guy. I'm assuming now, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm assuming this guy you're talking about that you see on a regular basis is one of the inmates? And you saying see him in terms of like having an intimate, romantic aspiration with this person? I don't think that's appropriate. That's not appropriate. Correct me if I'm wrong now. Maybe you're talking about some person that worked there. It could be somebody different, right? And I'm thinking, okay, is this a fantasy? Because sometimes y'all be mixing truth with fiction in y'all stories that y'all share with me. So I'm just like, is this this fantasy coming out? You say he is 6 feet something and very muscular. He must be one of the biggest guys in there. Yeah, you sound like one of the inmates up in there, huh? Say, however, he seems very sweet and kind. I have a crush on him, but I need to pretend that there's nothing there. That's exactly why it makes me believe that it's one of the inmates, because they don't need to pretend. Like, granted, it can still be a violation of professional boundaries for you to be expressing interest in, let's say, a person that works there, and you as a volunteer, and you trying to do something else there that's outside of the agreement for which you signed up for. But it's just like, that shit is inappropriate, right? But then it goes to show, I feel like, and I do it to myself when it comes to this whole power play. Granted, I identify myself as submissive, and you identified yourself as having this fantasy, romanticizing the idea of being a submissive to a dominant black man and being his, housewife 100% of the time, right? 24/7. Even though like we identify as such, right, within that framework, like oftentimes, we call it switch. I don't really like to say I'm a switch. I'm not really a switch, but I do play within that power dynamic. It's just inevitable, I think, to happen. And so I see that within you, because you also said that you have experienced, being attracted to and probably having some relations with femboys, right, or trans women. And this is you as, man, born male, right? Like you have male genitalia, but meanwhile, you're attracted to these types. At the same time, you're also attracted to dominant, right? You're attracted to feminine men, but you're also attracted to dominant men, right? So it goes to show like the variability that you have within yourself to be flexible, right? And to be fluid in your gender attraction. And not only such, but also your gender expression too. I find that also to be very interesting. Because within this, these are men, if, obviously you're attracted to a man that is institutionalized, as incarcerated, that as an inmate, like they are in a vulnerable situation. Now, granted, you are violating clearly, professional boundaries. But within that, it's just like these are men. This is a man that you're describing here at the prison where you volunteer. Like he is vulnerable. Like you hold the power in that situation. You hold the power, right? You're free. You're a free person working there. He is incarcerated, right? And you're saying that you are attracted to him. What that exchange looks like when you see him, who knows, right? But you say, but I need to pretend that there's nothing there, right? Like it's just professional boundaries being maintained. Also, I'm not sure that he will ever consider being with me. Yeah, because he probably know what's up. Like, this motherfucker trying to get over on me, right? But you do have, there are inmates, they like that shit. And if anything, they are the ones manipulating the situation. They are the ones manipulating the employees, the COs, right? The guards that work there to get them to bring them all kinds of contraband that ain't know they're not supposed to have, right? The guards be bringing them cell phones, all kind of shit. Food. I've seen it with my own bare eyes. I used to work in a prison in California, and I've seen this shit go down. So it's a real thing. Where perceivably the inmates who seem to be in a more subservient, less empowered position, they are the ones that be manipulating the whole thing. Yeah, I could see myself catching real feelings for him. And what is it, right? You say that you are attracted to this type of man, being a man that is incarcerated at the prison. What would you see in a man like that, in that state that he's in? What is it other than him being physically dominant? Okay, right? He has the muscles, he has the height, right? The stature. Okay, but there are men who are not in prison, right? Who have that. So it's something else that's in him that you, I think, are playing upon, right? Could be his own vulnerabilities, right? Him, having less power, evidently. Don't know what he's there for, but he's locked up. He can't go nowhere. He has limited autonomy over his own decisions. He can't, they're locked down, 23 hours a day? They can't even choose what they eat. They can't choose when they get up, or they can't choose nothing. Every aspect of their being and their livelihood is decided and chosen and dictated for them, right? So perhaps you do like that dynamic. Right? I feel like it's a whole spectrum of ways that a person's sexual identity and expression can show up, right? And this is the reason why I say, if you recall in my previous video, it's not about having to put a label, because sometimes labels, granted, they say that it's used for ease of communication and understanding, right? Even within the context of psychology, and psychologists using the DSM to diagnose people, right? But sometimes it can be even more complicated than that, because we're not just that cut and dry. We don't necessarily fit in any particular box. We can't, because we're so dynamic and we're so unique and intricate as human beings, So with that, you just can't put yourself in one box. You don't fit in any of the boxes, right? So you could very much well be attracted to men who are dominant, who appear, right, to be physically strong and dominant, and can overpower you physically. But at the same time, you being 5'3", you being a white man, you may also take pleasure in dominating such type of man, right? And being able to kind of siege power over him in the position that he's in. Because clearly, right, you are the one who holds the power in that position, even though you're a volunteer working at the prison. All right, so let's keep going. And when you spoke about power dynamics, who is really in control? Funny enough that you lead into that, right, in the next follow-up paragraph. That makes a lot of sense to me. I heard a term on another channel, topping from the bottom. In respect to my own personal behavior and personality, that answers a lot of questions. I may never be a true alpha compared to physically superior males, but I could never really be beta either. Exactly. The words right out of my mouth, right? Like, you know, like you said, you are a very astute, you know, you're educated man. So, yes, you are sharing your life experience. You're sharing, you know, your story with me. And of course, I'm obviously providing my own interpretation and framework for the things that you have shared. Like, you already know. Like, you have all the answers. Like, everything that maybe you could be seeking from me and watching my video and my reaction to your email, you have this knowledge, right? And this insight within you, right? It's already there. You're like answering everything that I'm pretty much laying out, right? So like you said, relating to power dynamics, it's just like you say, I might never be a true alpha compared to physically superior males, but I could never really be beta either. Exactly. I have built my entire life around overcoming obstacles and self-empowerment, which is very important to you. And it's good that you know that and you embrace it and you own that. Right? So it's good that you say that you acknowledge it about yourself, but I also have to point out another discrepancy and a contradiction that you have made here, where in the previous email you say you want to be 100%, right, housewife. So how does that work out? If you want to be 100% housewife, submissive to a dominant man, like, and granted, these are fantasies, right? And sometimes we fantasize about things that really is not close to reality. You even pointed it out. You're just like, you know what? Maybe it's not really that realistic. It's a fantasy, right? It's something that you imagine, and it may give you butterflies just thinking about it. It's like, right, fairy tale. But is it really ideal? Is it really realistic, so to speak, right? Is it? Perhaps? Because like you say, you're about overcoming obstacles, which that's just your template. Given your history, given, you know, your life experiences as a child growing up, without your mother really there, right, being raised by your grandmother, it makes sense. That's all you know. Is overcome you. That's what you know, right? You know anything else, you know how to overcome some obstacles, right? And beat the odds. You know that. And you do this, you're self-motivated, right? Like, you don't need somebody else to try to pull you up. You pull yourself up out your own fucking out of your own mess, right? About leadership, I was raised by the guys in my neighborhood. I found this is what I think I had a difficult time trying to grapple with, and I think I was experiencing some cognitive dissonance, you know, in this part, which also kind of made me feel like, is he making this shit up? Right? Is this where the fiction story comes in? Because I know some of y'all be like, y'all some storytellers such as myself. So it made me think like, but then, you know, and with second thought, as I thought about it, you know, even deeper, I'm like, you know, actually, this really could be true. There are people for who, you know, stories do match up with this, and this is just their true reality. This is their real life experience. Where you say you were raised by the guys in your neighborhood, we were like a gang, but not officially, right? Growing up in South Florida, you said I was one of the youngest at 13. Some of us were as old as late 20s. It was not a race thing. We were white, black, and Spanish. It was an aggressive group. I was not the leader, but I was respected and had a lot of plans. By the time I was 29, I had to turn my life around or end up in prison or worse. Makes sense why you would gravitate to want to volunteer at a prison. Like that's your way of giving back, pouring into individuals who whose stories closely align with yours, right? And like you said, you could have easily been one of those guys in prison. So you probably see a lot of yourself in that person that you described earlier that you are attracted to, right? So it's okay to have this attraction. That's natural. You know, even therapists, like we may find ourselves having an attraction, and sometimes it can be fucking titillating, right? Or sexual, so to speak, to our patients or our clients. But then it's also important, equally important for us to be mindful, self-aware of what we feel in our bodies, right? And what does that mean, right? And to draw that boundary has always to be a professional boundary there, and to understand like, okay, this is why this is why I'm attracted to this guy, not only because obviously his physical stature is, you know, appealing, and you know, he emanates this character that could perceivably be a paternal figure that I lacked, right? And someone who I identified myself with growing up in this neighborhood, right, amongst the gang, so to speak, of guys who catered to me, who took care of me, who nurtured me, who provided that which I was lacking, right? So it makes sense that you would, you know, looking at such person or being around them, right, you see that in that person. It's like, it's a reflection, it's a reminder, right? It is a symbol of a remembrance, like, oh, this is somebody that is important, of a value, right? But it's also important to realize, like, okay, even though this person as a symbol could remind you of something, right, a figure that was important to you in your life, right, and evoke some kind of emotion and feelings, right, something that's going off in your body, you just still have to be, you know, mindful of that. All right, so it was an aggressive group. I was not the leader, but I was respected and had a lot of plans. By the time I was 29, I had to turn my life around or end up in prison or worse. Shortly after that, I decided to go back to school. Around the age of 29? And you're 42? Not too late to go back to school, but that's good though. You pull things together. He said, I was the president of everything, honor society, newspaper, and other groups. I worked part-time jobs, and I was always offered management positions. Yeah, that's the thing about, like, when people who have gone through a lot of shit, right, and had a shitty deck of cards dealt to them and had to overcome adversity, those are some of the brightest, smartest, strongest, successful people. I follow this comedian who's also, she's from Florida, and she goes by the name of Real Comedian Latrice. She's funny, you know, right? And of course she comes off as ghetto because she's from the hood, but she's very successful. And in one of her most recent videos, I forget the title that she put on there, but she was sitting on the couch. Her kids had already fallen asleep, and she had like powder. If you want to look for the video on her page, she had like a bunch of powder on her chest. She just made the video, but she was like, she does this from time to time, where she was just kind of uncapping and sharing like her life experience and some things she had overcome, you know, growing up in foster care, being sent out to this girls program, residential program, where, you know, she was, you know, locked up, but she was sitting there, she was committed by the judge, and just seeing how, like, though that could be someone's past, right? A person could think, like, from the outside looking in, if you were to see that person, right, in that space and time, right, when she was, let's say, a teenager, troubled child at that time, rebellious, bad as fuck, right? No one probably would have ever thought, right, that she would grow up, and now she is a multimillionaire, right? She's an influencer. She making bank. She owns 3 beautiful homes, right? And she made videos where she's shown like her paycheck where this woman makes a crazy money a month. Like thousands, like hundreds of thousands of dollars per month from Facebook. You hear me? But no one probably would have ever imagined. So I just say all this to say, like, despite a person's like shortcomings and the shit that they've gone through, being dealt a terrible, shitty deck of cards and all the adversity, it's just like, yet those people are just the strongest and they shine. They shine, they overcome, and those are some of your brightest, most successful people, celebrities included. So you will be surprised. But like he says, I was the president of everything, honor society, newspaper, and other groups. I work part-time jobs, and I've always offered management, and I was always offered management positions. I began organizing events to earn scholarships. At first, I tried to control everything and everyone, yet I learned how to see people's potential and delegate accordingly, which makes you a good person to own a business, right? Like, you embody those skills and lived experience to be able to, be able to run and own and operate, right, your own business. The same, like, skills it takes to, like, just survive, like, all the things that you had to survive growing up, right? That's what it takes to be able to handle that level of responsibility of owning, right, your own business. People think it's easy to own a business. It's not. Like, it takes a lot. It takes some really thick skin, number one. It takes a lot. So let's keep going. He says, that said, I struggle with my own narcissism and egotism. I constantly check myself. I don't necessarily like to be the leader. Truthfully, I recently attended, I get that too, especially when you have been forced kind of to be in that leadership position and taking charge. And you kind of had to do that prematurely, growing. I would imagine, like, growing up without your parents. You grew up fast, right? And so you definitely were forced into that leadership position before your own time, and just carrying that with you throughout your life and through your development. It makes sense, right? That you need a fucking break. You're like, damn, like, can I just be a child, or, be in that position where someone is taking care of me and not having to worry, not having to plan 10 steps ahead and be in control of everything and having to organize, right? And use all this executive functioning. Like, can you just be able to digress for a little while and just be in your feminine or soft era, so to speak, right? Like, yeah, balance. That's what you're seeking, I think. So it makes sense sometimes why you will vacillate between the dom, the submission, right? Those different dichotomies within this power spectrum, because that's what your life experiences have called for you to do that. And you have that level of self-awareness, to notice that and to own it. I appreciate that. Say, I don't necessarily, he said, I constantly check myself. Me too. I don't necessarily like to be the leader. Truthfully, I recently attended an event that I did not organize. I was sitting out by the grill. Several dudes were trying to cook food for 200 people. That's a lot of people fucking to cook food for, right? The whole thing was falling apart reluctantly. I stepped in. Everyone just fell in line, even the stronger, bigger men. We have all... It makes sense, though, yeah, because you got to listen. You come from a space that even the most... that's the strongest men physically, right? The most prowess, like, they don't come from the space that you've come from, right? They ain't been through what you've been through. They don't have the knowledge and lived experience that you have in certain areas and aspects, right? So you bring that, right? And you know how to get them all in line and make things kind of fall accordingly, right? And so that's a gift, you know? And so, you know, sometimes, you know, we sometimes we look down on our own life and the shit that we've been through. I'm like, why me kind of thing, right? But it's like, why not you? Because look what it has shaped. Look what it has birthed. A leader, right? A person who is very much capable of being able to, like you say, 200 people, right? Being able to feed that many people and manage and coordinate and arrange for everything to kind of fall in place. If you can do that, how much more can you accomplish? Think about it like that. We have all the food and it turned out good. Maybe my problem is that I just want everything. I want it all. Yeah. Why not? And I have to distinguish between realistic, healthy ambitions and delusional thinking. I can relate to that. Why do you want it all? Maybe, you embody it all too. You've, not to say that you've seen it all, but probably you've seen a lot more than a lot of people in your age group, right? You've been through some things that people in your age group probably haven't been through. Even though, like, let's say you have a circle of people that you've been exposed to, right? But beyond that circle of people, like, that's not your average person. Your circle, your immediate circle of friends, right? Like, you talk about the gang that you had, you were hanging around. That's not your average people, right? And so, you think about average, you probably have experienced a lot more than what the average person in your age group has. And so you kind of, you have it all within you, right? So perhaps you envision that it's capable, like you're very much capable, and it's possible for you to experience that and achieve those things. Could be, right? And you're still kind of exploring too. I know in my previous video I did kind of allude, and I actually explicitly stated that it's kind of sometimes surprising to see people in their 40s just still exploring their sexual identity, or exploring different genres and aspects of porn, right? And I say that by comparison to my lived experience and dibbling and dabbling in porn in my teens, so I felt like it kind of got played out. But to each his own, and I can understand how, like, for you, granted, it's like you have been going through this internal struggle, and like you mentioned, it's just like the battle between trying to ascertain to societal expectations of living up to this ideal of a traditional marriage between a man and a wife, and a picket fence, and kids, and a dog, and whatever, right? And then meanwhile, you're also drawn to these other alternative sexual dynamics, right? And you're thinking, okay, can you do both? Can you have it all? To be honest, y'all, like, especially the day and age we live in, it's all kinds of things that be going down. And I've seen situations and dynamics where, yes, granted, we do live in a patriarchal society. I've seen it where men actually they've had it all. They have both, like, at the same time, like traditional, right? With them and being a man and, wife, actually multiple wives at the same time, dibbling dabbling on the other side, like doing it all. I've seen it all. But then I think truthfully with that though, and what I also seen is that it came crumbling down too. Like, it was good while it lasted, and they had a long running span of time where they was doing it. They was living it up. It was just like, damn, a lot of people were looking up to this person too. Like, how can he he literally had it all. he was like, he had everything. He had multiple wives. And at the same time, like, he was living out his own sexual alternative fantasies that didn't involve women. Shall I say that? He was just like, just living. And, you know, that could be a wonderful thing. Just to live without having to live up to someone's expectations of what you should be doing, right? Or what you've internalized as the ideal. Because you still hold these idolized expectations and imaginations of what things should be. And I think that's hard to let go. That could be your biggest challenge moving forward, actually. Anyways, I should probably just leave it there. I really do appreciate this dialogue. I think that you have a very reasonable and smart perspective on these issues. Yeah, because, I mean, granted, I have lived life too, right? So, like, people who have lived experience can speak from that, and they just know. Like, when you know that you know that you know, right? I often say, despite how things may seem, right? Because I know some people, and I counter this a lot, where, like, even in professional settings, like, they come across me, and maybe, I guess, I don't know, phenotypically speaking, I may look like I'm young, or I look like a little girl, or sometimes I maybe act like a little girl, right? I may go in my regress state, and then people perceive you to be a certain way. They look at you like, oh, well, yeah, she young, or she don't really know, and then they find out, okay, actually, I'm 40 years old, right? I've lived in multiple states across the United States. I have much experience, and then their jaw drops like, I would never know. Like, yeah, looks can be deceiving. I just say that, looks can be deceiving. And, you know, even from the things I've shared here, I mean, granted, I am pretty transparent. I'm open. And I've shared a lot. But even with the things I've shared, like, y'all still have no clue. Like, y'all just still don't know. And much I have reserved for my autobiography. Even with that, it's just, I didn't tell everything. Even in my autobiography, I've shared a lot, which is going to turn a lot of heads and drop a lot of fucking jaws, right? Because I've been through a lot. I've lived, listen, when I tell you, I have lived life. So, like I say, experience is the best teacher, and I pride myself in being an effective educator and teacher, and I speak oftentimes from personal experience, obviously from my education, my training. But yeah, I can speak confidently, about what I know, let's say. And with that being said, I thank you all for tuning in. There could be a part 3 to this. We'll see. We'll see what he says in his follow-up email. I think it's a lot to uncover. There's so many different directions. Listen, we can go with this, right? And you guys tune in, because in my follow-up email, in my follow-up video, I will be discussing this new direction I'm going to be going with my channel. So you guys just stay tuned, and I will catch you all in the next one. Share this video.